Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Women's Life Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The fluorescent lights hummed. A bailiff called all rise, and the Cuyahoga County Domestic Relations courtroom shifted to its feet like a single creature. I stood with them, spine rigid, both hands wrapped around a blue shoebox tied with a frayed ribbon. The cardboard was cool against my skin. The ribbon bit my fingers. Somewhere beyond the windows, Lake Erie carried a hard winter wind. I could almost hear my porch wind chimes in that sound. Judge Miriam Alvarez entered and took her seat. She had a face that gave nothing away. I tried to breathe in steady counts, 3 and 4 out. My heart did not listen. Across the aisle, Lauren pretended not to see me. Her navy dress fit like a decision. She did not glance at the son and daughter she had not held in 15 years. She only watched the shoebox. I watched it too. The box had weight that was not paper, hospital discharges, school pictures, the letter that kept me awake more nights than I can count. Blue lid, gray ribbon, truth in a box. All of this began on a night of dirty snow when the chimes on my porch did not make a single sound. 15 years earlier, I wiped condensation from the kitchen window and saw 2 shapes on the step. The porch light caught glitter in the snowfall. Evan's cheeks were raw from the cold. He was 4 and trying very hard not to cry. Lila, on his hip, 2 years old, clutched a stuffed rabbit with no nose. Her hair was a knot. Her breath came in little clouds. Your mother said to stay here till I got back. Evan told me as if repeating rules could make them true. I pulled them inside. Boots thudded on the mat. Wet socks steamed near the heater. I made ramen and cut a banana in coins. Lila's hands shook when she reached for the spoon. Evan watched the door through the steam as if it might answer him. Is Mom coming back soon, Nana? He asked. Of course, I said. My voice sounded steady and small. I tucked them into the guest room under a quilt that smelled like laundry soap and cedar. All night the refrigerator clicked and the house creaked, and I listened for a taxi that never pulled up. Days turned into a habit. I learned the high whistle of the kettle the way Lila leaned into the brush when I parted her hair, the exact squeak of Evan's sneakers on the school hallway floor. When he wet the bed, I stripped sheets and told him bodies talk sometimes when mouths cannot. Dr. Dana Kim at the clinic said grief finds doorways any way it can. I kept notes, medicine times, school calls, fever spikes. The wind outside carried lake cold. The chimes on the porch never moved. I went to the courthouse and filled out forms with boxes that did not fit the shape of what had happened. Provisional custody, notification by publication. All the words felt like a language for other people. I put every stamped page in the blue shoebox. When the order came through, I cried in the pantry so the kids would not see. When 7 years passed and nothing changed, the temporary became permanent. I did not celebrate. I made spaghetti and checked math homework while Evan told me about Saturn's rings, and Lila drew a sparrow that looked more alive on paper than the ones at the feeder. They asked about their mother less as they got older, but not never. Why did she go? Did she get lost? Did we do something? I told them adults are complicated and that children are never reasons. I did not show them the letter that had arrived 3 months after the night of snow. I kept it under the shoebox lid where it pressed down on everything else. Do not look for me. They are better with you. Let them forget me. I could not. I memorized Evan's cowlick and Lila's paint-stained nails. I bought new shoes in August. I ironed shirts for band concerts. I learned to sit in waiting rooms without moving. The porch chimes were a sculpture in air. On a Tuesday, when the sidewalks were a mix of salt and slush, the doorbell rang and the sound went straight through me. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find Lauren on my step 38 and smaller than I remembered. Lines had started near her mouth. Her coat was expensive and wrong for the weather. Beside her stood a man with a leather briefcase and a smile that was all surface. Mom, Lauren said, I am here for my children. Victor Price, he said, extending a card. Counsel. My hands went cold on the knob. Your children, I said, and the words made the hallway tilt. We stood in a square of cold air. Water ran from the hems of their coats. You cannot just arrive after 15 years and talk like there was a pause, I said. They do not know you. I am their mother, she said. I have legal rights. Behind me, the floorboard by the hallway vent creaked. Evan stood there with his backpack on one shoulder. 19 now, but I still saw the boy who used to sleep with a flashlight to keep the shadows flat. His gaze moved from Lauren's face to the briefcase and back again. Lila's bedroom door opened and she stepped into the light, a pencil smudge on the side of her hand like a bruise. "Mom," Lila said, and the syllable caught. She did not move closer. Lauren tried to smile. "Look at you," she said to Lila. "You got tall." "What do you want?" Evan asked. He kept his voice level. It was the tone he used in lab when a reaction did not behave. "To make things right," Lauren said too quickly. Victor lifted a document with a gold seal. "Petition to modify custody." He said it like reading a menu. We went to the living room because the cold in the doorway would not let us think. The couch springs spoke as we sat. I took the blue shoebox from the hall table and set it in my lap. Lauren's eyes went right to it. The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Frame pictures lined the shelf. Lila with paint on her chin. Evan in a cap and gown. Empty space under the graduation photo where a second parent would have stood. "Let us not make this ugly," Victor said. "My client never relinquished her parental rights. She is stable now. She can offer opportunities, private school, better programs, a change of environment." Lila stared at her hands. Evan stared at Victor's tie. I stared at the ribbon on the shoebox. "You left a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and you did not come back," I said. There were nights in the ER, there were school plays with one grandparent clapping too loud. "Where were you?" Lauren's jaw tightened. "I was sick," she said. "I was broke. I was alone." "And now you are not," Evan said. "Now I'm ready," she said. Silence moved through the room like a draft. The wind picked up outside. Somewhere in the house, the furnace clicked on. Victor stood. "We have a hearing set with Judge Alvarez next week," he said. "I suggest you prepare them for the transition." He said transition like a staircase that only went one way. "You will not take them," I said, "not without a fight." No one shouted. No one slammed a door. They left with their coats still wet, and the house filled back up with our air. Lila went to her room and shut the door with a soft click that hurt more than a slam. Evan stayed in the living room and sat in the chair that faces the window. He watched nothing for a long time, then he said, "She cannot just take us right." I put the shoebox on my knees. The ribbon had started to tear in one spot. The lid made a dry sound when I lifted it. Papers, photographs, doctor's notes. Behind the school report cards was the envelope cheap paper that had thinned at the folds. The letters were slanted and fast. "Do not look for me." I read the first line and stopped. My thumb rested in the crease. My porch wind chimes finally moved. A thin sound, delicate and sure, came through the glass. I closed the box and listened. The chimes hushed. The house took its shape again. I slid the blue shoebox back under the hall table and set a mug beneath the coffee maker for morning. Sleep did not come. When it did, it was thin and full of leftover voices. At dawn, I called Marisol. She answered on the second ring, still hoarse from sleep. I could hear her cat scratching at a door. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her the hallway cold the briefcase the word transition. I told her about the letter under the lid, the one with "Do not look for me" in a slant. I knew better than my own handwriting. I told her how Evan watched the tie and Lila watched her hands. "All right," she said. "You need a map. Timeline copies of every contact you tried to make the publication notice from back then. Any witness who saw you doing the work of parenting. I can refer you to a family law specialist. He is careful and not theatrical. His name is Alan Whitaker." Careful sounded like shelter. She texted me his number, then added another contact. "If you want to know why she came now, call this man. He used to be a cop. He is good at making rooms talk." I wrote both numbers on the back of a grocery receipt and taped it inside the shoebox lid. Evan came down for breakfast in the t-shirt his college gave out to new students. He made eggs and did not eat them. Lila shuffled in with a blanket over her shoulders and graphite on her knuckles. "I am not hungry," she said. "You need something in your stomach," I said. "There is yogurt, toast, the kettle sings, and you have art club after last period." She nodded and packed a granola bar. Evan put the eggs in a container and closed the lid. He looked past me at the hall table where the blue ribbon trailed to the floor like a vein. "That box," he said. "It holds what we need," I said. "It held us when nothing else did." On my way home from dropping Lila, I parked outside an office building with a brick facade that looked like it wanted to be older than it was. The sign on the glass read Whitaker Family Law. The waiting room had a ficus and a water cooler that burbled. Alan had a face the color of copy paper and the slow patience of someone who had witnessed many versions of the same pain. He listened, took notes, asked for dates. He watched my hands when I talked about the letter. He watched my eyes when I said the name Lauren, without putting my tongue on the R. "Best interest standard," he said. Judges care about stability, continuity, and truth. Abandonment documented over time is not an opinion. It is a fact pattern. Bring me the letter if you can stomach that. Bring me the publication proofs. Bring me school records and medical records that show decision-making. If there are any messages from her in the years after she left, we need those too. If you can document her motive for coming back, now that is relevant. Her motive, I said. He nodded. I felt an old ache rise in my throat like steam trying to escape a lid. After lunch, I met the man from Marisol's second contact at a diner that smelled like hot oil and coffee that had been on a burner too long. His name was Reuben Pike. He wore a wool coat with a missing button and kept his hat on until the first cup of coffee landed between us. "You are the grandmother," he said. He did not say it like a question. "I am," I said. He nodded as if that itself was a credential. "You want," why he said. "Why now?" He opened a notebook with a bent corner. "I will need her last known address, any job you think she might have the names of people she used to spend time with. If she has a new place, I will find it. If she changed her name, I will find that too. If there is paper on a table that matters, I will see it." I gave him what I had. A past address written on the back of an envelope. A friend named Denise who once called asking for money that I did not have. The fact that Lauren liked department stores that smelled like perfume and fresh cardboard. He drank his coffee and wrote. He did not promise timelines. He did not sell results. He slid a card across the table and said he would be in touch. When he stood, his coat carried the smell of winter and cigarettes. That afternoon, the sky turned the color of a bruise. Lila's art club met in a classroom with paint on the floor and a window that faced the parking lot. I stood in the hallway and listened to their laughter. When Lila came out, she had a black streak along the side of her hand like a shadow that forgot to leave. "What are you drawing?" I asked. "People without faces," she said. "I want the bodies to do the talking." At home, Evan lined up index cards on the kitchen table the way he did when he studied for exams. Each card got a date and a word. ER, school conference, Dr. Kim, soccer tournament. I brought the shoebox and sat with him, and we filled the cards until the ribbon coiled around my wrist, and the table was full. Reuben called the next morning while I was scrubbing a pot. I dried my fingers on a towel and pressed the phone to my ear. "I went by a complex on Cedar," he said. "Her name is on the buzzer. I got in after someone else came out. The place smells like new carpet and reheated noodles. On a table near the door, under a ceramic bowl with keys, there is an open envelope from a law firm called Sawyer & Bell. The date on the top corner is 3 weeks ago. I took a photo. I will send it to your email when we hang up." I wiped the counter with the towel and did not realize I was holding my breath until the room tilted. "What kind of law firm?" I asked. "Estate." The letter references a decedent named Thomas Avery Seattle address, survived by a sister and 2 nieces and nephews. It says he left a bequest. It also says there are restrictions. The word trust is here. There is language about minors and age of distribution. There is a clause about educational expenses with guardian approval. My knees let me down onto a chair before I asked to see the picture. The email landed with a soft ping. I opened the photo. The letterhead was tidy in a serif font. The words matched his summary. Evan stood behind me and read over my shoulder, his mouth flattened. Lila stood in the doorway and pressed her fingers into the door frame. How much, I asked. The number felt beside the point and still mattered. $500,000 per child, he said. He spoke without drama as if reading a recipe. The funds are available at 21. Before that, only through a guardian for qualifying education costs. The taste in my mouth turned to aspirin. I looked down at the ribbon in my hands and saw a place where it had frayed to a single thread. There is more, he said. There is a call log that shows a number tied to Sawyer and Bell dialed the day after that letter was opened. 2 days later, there is a retainer payment to a man named Victor Price. I'm working on getting audio from a meeting at a coffee shop where they like to sit. The staff knows me as the guy who always tips and forgets his hat. We ended the call. I put both hands on the table and held the surface so the room would stop moving. Evan went to campus and sat through a lab he would not remember. Lila painted hands reaching for a frame that had nothing in it. I washed the same mug 3 times before realizing it was already clean. At 4, I took the shoebox to Alan's office. He wore a navy sweater and a tie that did not match. He read quickly and carefully. He copied the letter that said, "Do not look for me," and did not ask if I was all right. He knew that question did not have a useful answer. He scanned the photograph of the Sawyer and Bell letter and wrote the word motive in the corner of his legal pad, then crossed it out and wrote the word context. "This matters," he said, and he tapped the letter about the trust with the tip of his pen. "The court will care about whether she is acting in good faith. We will need to authenticate this. We will need to show the dates and the sequence. If there is audio, we will need to argue admissibility. Conversations in public places usually do not carry a reasonable expectation of privacy. We will check the case law here." I sat in his office and tried to hear his words over the sound that had started up in the back of my skull. A kettle that had been left on. He handed me a tissue that was rough and thin. He took the shoebox and locked it in a drawer while he copied things so I would not have to carry it through the parking lot again. I stopped by the grocery store and bought bread and apples and a roast chicken. The woman at the register had a Band-Aid on her finger that matched her lipstick. She asked for my store card. I gave it to her and signed the receipt and did not remember walking to the car. When I turned onto our street, the wind picked up and the chimes on the porch at the house next door made a sound like ice in a glass. I parked and sat with my hands on the wheel until the engine ticked cool. Inside, I set the chicken on the counter and the apples in a bowl. Evan came in and put his backpack by the chair. Lila sat on the floor near the heat vent and let warm air lift her hair. A text from Ruben arrived at 7. "File ready," it said. "Public place, clear audio." He added the name of the cafe, Juniper Bean, and a link. My finger hovered above the screen. I pressed play. The background clatter came first. Cups and a steam wand, chairs scuffing the floor, then Victor. His voice was smooth and made to be trusted. "Once we file," he said, "we emphasize recovery in your capacity. You are not asking for the impossible. Judges appreciate plans." Lauren's voice came next. Smaller than I remembered, tired. "Once I have custody," she said, "their education fund can keep a roof over our heads. It is for school anyway. Housing is part of that picture." Victor made a sound that could have been a laugh or a cough. He said something about framing it as necessity. The ribbon came apart in my hand with a soft snap. The chimes outside gave a single small note. I did not move. The chimes settled. I slid the blue shoebox under the hall table, turned off the kitchen light, and lay down without undressing. Sleep came in thin slices that tasted like metal. When the kettle woke the house at 6, I was already up. Marisol answered on the second ring. Her voice had the rasp of morning and a friend knowing the shape of my name. "Tell me," she said. I told her about the word transition and the cold in the doorway. I told her about Lauren watching the box instead of her children. I told her about the letter under the lid. "Do not look for me." I said the words and felt them land. "You need a family lawyer," she said. "Not a flamethrower. Someone who knows the room and the judge. Alan Whitaker. I will text you his number, make him a timeline. Every form you ever filed. Every appointment you took the kids to. The publication notices from back then. If there were calls or letters from her, gather them. If you want to know why she came, now I know a man. He used to be a cop. He can make a coffee shop tell you who sat where yesterday." She sent both numbers while we were still on the phone. I wrote them on the back of a receipt and taped the paper inside the shoebox lid. The tape wrinkled. I smoothed it and it wrinkled again. Evan came down in his college t-shirt and made eggs he did not eat. Lila shuffled behind him with a blanket over her shoulders and graphite along her knuckles. She poured cereal and did not touch it. The heater ticked. The house smelled like toast and old coffee. "You need protein," I said, and she nodded like a student trying to be polite. Evan set the pan in the sink and glanced at the hall table. The ribbon had slipped and trailed on the floor like a blue vein. "That box holds more than paper," he said. "It does," I said. On my way back from dropping Lila, I found Whitaker Family Law in a building that wanted to look older than it was. The waiting room had a ficus plant and a stack of magazines with their corners turned up. Alan called my name and led me to an office with a window that faced a parking lot dressed in slush. He listened without interrupting. He noted dates in a hand that kept the numbers straight. He watched my hands when I talked about the night of snow, about laundry soap, about quiet refrigerators and hard winters. "Judges look at best interest," he said. "Continuity, safety, evidence of abandonment over time. Bring me the letter from her if you can bear seeing it out of the box. Make me a copy of the publication notices, medical and school records that show you making decisions. If there is any communication from her, we need it. If there is proof of a motive for returning that is relevant." He slid a tissue box toward me and pretended he did not. The tissue was dry and thin. I tore one corner and folded it back together without thinking. I met the man from Marisol's second text at a neighborhood diner where the coffee had been on a hot plate since dawn. He wore a wool coat with a missing button and set his hat on the chair beside him like a friend. His face had the weary kindness of someone who knew how to wait. "You are the grandmother," he said. He did not make it a question. I nodded. He wrote her name and my name at the top of a lined page. He wrote 2 lines and then stopped. "You want why and why now," he said. "Give me her last known address, her likely job, any habit that leaves a trail, people who might still return her calls." I told him about the apartment near the mall back then. I told him she liked department stores that smelled like cardboard and perfume. I gave him the name of a friend who once asked for money, Denise with the red nails. He looked at my hands when I said the friend's name. He wrote it down and ordered 1 more coffee. "I pay staff to remember me as the guy who tips," he said. "It makes rooms looser." He smiled without showing teeth. At home noon turned the sky a flat pewter. Evan lined up index cards on the kitchen table like a lab procedure. Each card got a date and a word. ER, Dr. Kim, Science Fair, Band Night. Lila sat on the floor by the heat vent and let warm air soak her hair. She had graphite on the heel of her hand that would not come off. She studied the cards like a map she did not want to read. Reuben called the next morning while I was scrubbing a pot that did not need more scrubbing. I dried my hands on a towel and pressed the phone to my ear. "She's in a complex on Cedar," he said. "Her name is on the buzzer." I walked in when a delivery guy pulled the door. New carpet smell. On a small table near the entrance there is an open letter under a bowl with keys. Law firm letterhead. Sawyer and Bell. The top corner date is 3 weeks ago. I did not touch it. I took a photo. I will send it when we hang up. My kitchen chair found me before my knees did. The email came through. I opened it. The letterhead was clean and small, serif and black. He read while I read. "Decedent is Thomas Avery," he said. "Seattle. Survived by a sister and 2 nieces and nephews. Bequest to 2 minors. Trust language. Age of distribution is 21. There is a clause about educational expenses with guardian approval." How much I asked, though, the number felt vulgar in the air. 500,000 apiece, he said, his voice even. He did not wait for the air to settle. There is also a call log, a call to Sawyer and Bell the day after that letter was opened. Retainer to Victor Price 2 days after. I'm working on audio from a coffee shop where they meet. Staff at Juniper Bean knows me as the guy who always tips and forgets his hat. We hung up. I sat still and let the room exist. Evan came in and stood behind me while I opened the photo again. Lila stood in the doorway with her thumb against the frame. The heater clicked. Outside, the wind moved a bare branch against the window. In the afternoon, I took the shoebox to Alan's office. He laid out a yellow pad and wrote the word context in the corner. He copied the letter with its small slanted "Do not look for me" and did not reach for my hand. He scanned the Sawyer and Bell photo and tucked the copy in a sleeve with a clip. He read Reuben's email and circled the dates with a careful pen. He talked about authentication and chain of custody and public conversations in places with steam wands. My ears heard him as if through a wall. I watched his mouth form words and could not hold them all. He walked me out with the shoebox locked in a second folder so I would not have to carry it bare to the car. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery and bought bread and apples and a chicken already roasted. The cashier had a Band-Aid on her finger that matched her lipstick. She asked if I needed stamps. I said no and forgot the bag of bread on the cart until she called after me. Evan had a late lab. Lila had art club. I sat at the kitchen table and folded the ribbon end through itself and tried to make it hold. The knot this time was sharper, more knot than bow. Reuben's text came just after 7. File ready, public place, clear audio, Juniper Bean. I pressed play. The cafe sounded like cups and chair legs. Victor's voice slid through, first smooth as if it had been sanded. "Once we file," he said, "we lead with recovery and capacity. Judges like plans." Lauren's voice was smaller than I remembered and older. "Once I have custody," she said, "their education fund can keep a roof over our heads. It is for school anyway. Housing is a part of that picture." Victor made a noise that could have been a laugh. He said a word that sounded like necessity. The ribbon split in my hand with a soft sound. I did not move. Lila came in and stood by the counter. She looked at the phone in my palm and then at my face. "Is that her?" Lila asked. "Yes," I said. She did not ask to hear. She leaned on the counter and stared at the apple bowl as if the fruit might answer her. Her hand lifted and fell and smudged a small gray mark on the laminate. Evan came home with snow in his hair. He shook it off by the door and saw the phone and the ribbon and the way my hands would not uncurl. "What did she say?" he asked. I told him. He closed his eyes for one count and opened them again. Alan called early the next day. His voice had a new edge inside the calm. "We will move to include this," he said. "Bring the original letter in the envelope. Bring the publication proofs. Bring any records that show medical consent and school enrollment. We will lay the dates in a line." Yobit. I put the phone down and opened the shoebox. Paper lifted and settled like a bird that forgot where to land. Hospital discharges, immunization charts, consent forms, report cards, a photo of Evan with a lost tooth and Lila with paint on her chin, the envelope from years ago that had thinned at the folds. "Do not look for me." I placed them in a stack and squared the corners. Lila came to the table with her sketchbook and opened to a page she had not shown anyone. Two figures stood in a doorway. One held a box. The other had a mouth that did not make a sound. The space between them was the subject. "I want bodies to do the talking," she said. Then she closed the book and went to put on her coat for school. I tied the ribbon into the best knot I could make. The bow came out crooked and stubborn. I put the box on the hall table where the light from the front window could find it. In the afternoon, a courier knocked with a white envelope. Hearing date and time. Judge Alvarez. The paper had weight like a small stone. I set it beside the box and stood in the doorway until the cold started to climb my ankles. Evan lined the index cards along the couch backrest and read them without touching. Lila sat on the floor with headphones on and no music playing. The chimes outside our neighbor's porch gave a slow, soft sound as if something had shifted in the wind. I picked up the shoebox and felt its weight settle into my arms like a sleeping child. The ribbon edge scratched my wrist where it had frayed. I held it steady and waited for the kettle to sing. The morning of the hearing came in the color of wet concrete. We parked, crossed the salted steps, and passed through the metal detector that beeped at a ring I had not been able to take off for 41 years. The hallway smelled like polish and old air. Evan walked beside me with his shoulders square. Lila kept one hand inside her coat pocket thumb, worrying a pencil nub until it left a gray comet on her skin. I carried the blue shoebox in both arms as if it might change its mind and shift away from me. A clerk called our case. We entered the courtroom. Fluorescent lights hummed like something alive. Victor Price was already at counsel table, glossy binder aligned with his pen. Lauren sat next to him in a navy dress that knew what it was doing. She did not look at the children. She looked at the lid of the shoebox the way a person looks at a door that might open. All rise. Judge Miriam Alvarez took the bench. Her robe fell neat. Her hair was pulled back. She had a way of pausing between words that made each one place its own weight on the record. "Be seated," she said. She glanced at the docket, then at us. "We are here on a petition to modify custody. I will hear from petitioner, then from respondent." She nodded at Victor. He stood with a small lift of his chin. "Thank you, Your Honor." He spoke in a voice that had been taught to sound like it had nothing to hide. 15 years ago, Ms. Lauren Hale faced a period of severe depression and financial instability. In a decision that was painful and intended to protect her children, she left them temporarily in the care of her mother. He lifted a hand as if weighing something. Since then, Ms. Hale has done the hard work of rebuilding her life. She is employed, housed, and in treatment. She seeks to resume her role in a way that serves her children. She never surrendered parental rights. He said the last sentence like it was a key that fit every lock. Alan rose when it was his turn. He did not straighten his tie because it did not match anything. "The best interest standard governs, Your Honor." He kept his hands open on the table. "Children are not put on pause. Mrs. Carter has been the stable caregiver for 15 years. She obtained legal custody through the court. She made medical decisions. She enrolled them in school." He gestured slightly toward the table where the shoebox sat. "We submitted documentation of that history." Judge Alvarez looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, I would like to hear from your grandchildren if they wish to speak." She turned to Evan. "You may remain seated if that is more comfortable." He stood anyway. "My name is Evan Carter," he said. 19. He placed his palms flat on the table to keep them still. "My grandmother raised me. She was there for me when I had pneumonia in 2nd grade for the science fair for nights when I could not sleep." He took a breath. "My mother," he looked toward Lauren and completed the sentence without touching it, "has not been part of my life." The judge nodded once. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." "Ms. Carter." Lila stood with the quickness of someone pulled by a string. She held her hands together to hide the graphite. "I was 2 when she left." Lila said, eyes forward, voice careful. I do not remember her being my mother. I remember my grandmother being my mother. She helped me with my first period. She came to school when kids made fun of me on Mother's Day. I do not want to move in with a person I do not know. Lauren's jaw flexed. She pressed her lips together. Victor placed 2 fingers on the table and kept them there. The judge listened without writing. She held the room without pushing on it. She looked to Victor. Anything further from petitioner at this stage? Victor stood. Your Honor, we do not dispute that Mrs. Carter has provided care. We submit that Ms. Hale's present capacity, combined with the biological relationship, warrants the opportunity to reunify. He smiled in a way that had edges. Allen rose again. Your Honor, respondent has additional materials that were not available at filing. He tapped the file folder with 2 fingers. They are recent and relevant to the question of motive and good faith. Victor did not wait to stand. Objection. Surprise evidence. We have not had the opportunity to review. Bring it forward, the judge said. I will decide admissibility. Allen approached the bench and handed up copies. He spoke without raising his voice. A letter written by Ms. Hale 3 months after she left, in which she directs her mother not to look for her and to allow the children to forget. Publication notices from when custody was sought and granted. School and medical records that show decision-making by Mrs. Carter. He paused to place another document on top. A letter dated 3 weeks ago from Sawyer and Bell, an estate firm addressed to Ms. Hale. It concerns a bequest to the children held in trust until age 21 with limited access for educational expenses upon approval by a guardian. He set the last piece down, a recording captured at Juniper Bean Cafe, a public place. In that recording, Ms. Hale speaks about using the children's education funds to cover housing. The judge looked at Victor. Counsel, you will have an opportunity to be heard. She turned her attention to the letter in her hand. Her brow did not move. She read silently, then read aloud the first line. Do not look for me. They are better with you. Let them forget me. The consonants were plain. The air in the room pressed in. Lauren blinked slowly and looked down at her folded hands. The judge slid that letter aside and examined the estate notice. Her eyes tracked the date at the corner. She looked at the phone log attached with a staple. This shows contact with the firm the day after the letter was received. It also shows a retainer to Mr. Price 2 days later. She did not change her tone. She set those papers down and picked up the transcript of the audio. She read for a moment, then looked to Allen. Is the recording clear? Recording? It is, Your Honor. Victor stepped forward. Your Honor, we challenge the admissibility of a recording obtained without consent. Allen stayed where he was. It was recorded in a public cafe. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy in that context. The recording was not intrusive. The conversation concerned potential use of funds controlled by a trust for minors. The judge rested her pen. I will allow the recording for purposes of this hearing. She nodded at the clerk, who pressed a key. The room filled with the soft clatter of cups and a steam wand. Then Victor's voice, smoother even through the small speakers. Once we file lead with recovery and capacity, judges like plans. Then Lauren's voice, smaller and tired. Once I have custody, their education fund can keep a roof over our heads. It is for school anyway. Housing is part of that picture. The last sentence came out almost apologetic. The recording clicked off. Silence pooled. Lila's fingers tightened on the back of the chair until the knuckles blanched. A pencil line appeared on her palm. Evan stared at the wood grain of the table as if it would line up into an answer. I rested my hand on the lid of the box so lightly I did not feel it. The judge turned to Lauren. Ms. Hale, is that your voice on the recording? Lauren swallowed. Yes, she said. She lifted her eyes to the bench and held them there for one beat. I was desperate. I was afraid of losing my apartment. I did not mean to hurt anyone. Her words stacked on each other too quick. The judge did not respond to the explanation. She addressed Victor. Counsel, anything further? Victor adjusted his tie. The petition is not a scheme, Your Honor. It is a request from a mother who wants to repair. He placed a hand flat on the table. The bequest is a coincidence and not the engine of this case. Allen did not look at Victor when he spoke. Your Honor, the sequence of dates is in the record. So is the content of the recording. The court has heard from the children. Continuity and stability are here. He did not add another word. Judge Alvarez leaned back a fraction and scanned the notes she had been making in a narrow column. The bailiff shifted his weight and the leather of his belt creaked. A woman in the back row coughed into a sleeve. The second hand on the clock made a soft tick that sounded louder than it was. "I will take a brief recess to review the submissions," the judge said. "We will reconvene shortly." She stood. "All rise." We rose. The blue shoebox sat quiet on the table. The ribbon edge showed its fray. Evan let out a breath I had not noticed he was holding. Lila wiped her palm on her skirt and left a ghost of graphite. Victor murmured to Lauren. Lauren stared at the middle distance as if a wall might offer terms. The judge stepped through the side door. The room kept the shape of her absence. I placed my palm on the lid of the box and felt the faint texture of cardboard under my skin. Somewhere down the hall, a copier started and paper moved in a steady hush. The chimes I carried in my head gave a small, careful sound that no one else in the room could hear. The judge returned with the steadiness of someone who knows the room will listen. We rose. The air tasted like metal from the radiator. When we sat again, the fluorescent hum seemed louder. "I have reviewed the submissions," Judge Alvarez said. Her voice held each word where it needed to be. "The court recognizes the long-standing role of Mrs. Carter as the children's primary caregiver. The record reflects an extended absence by Ms. Hale, a letter directing non-contact, and recent communications regarding a trust that raised questions about motive and good faith. The voices of the young people have been heard." She looked at Lila, then Evan, then down at the file. "Custody of minor child Lila Carter will remain with Mrs. Carter until the child reaches the age of majority. With respect to Evan Carter, who is 19, the court affirms his right to determine his residence." She did not pause. "In light of the evidence presented, including the recording, the court issues a restraining order prohibiting Ms. Hale from contacting or approaching Mrs. Carter, Evan Carter and Lila Carter within 100 yards for a period of 12 months. The court will refer the matter to the district attorney for review regarding possible misuse of a trust, noting that no funds have been dispersed." The gavel touched wood. Not loud. Enough. Lauren's chair scraped back. She stood so quickly the legs tipped. Victor's hand rose and stopped in the air a second too late. "You cannot do this," Lauren said. She turned toward me as if I had written the order. "You turned them against me. They are mine." Two deputies moved. Their belts creaked. One stepped between us and placed a palm toward her without touching. "Ms. Hale," he said, and it was enough to pull her words back inside her mouth. She swayed, then set her jaw, then looked at the floor. Victor leaned in close and spoke into the space just above her shoulder. The only sound after that was the shuffle of paper and a cough from the back row. We filed out with the others. The hallway smelled like polish and cold. Evan walked at my side, hands in his pockets, shoulders level. Lila stayed a half step behind Thumb, rubbing a pencil nub until her skin went gray. I held the blue shoebox against my chest and felt the faint give of cardboard. A clerk down the hall dropped a stack of files and laughed softly. The laugh slid along the tile and vanished. Outside the courthouse, the wind came round the corner and found all the places we had left uncovered. Salt stung the air. A siren in the distance lifted and fell. We crossed to the car without speaking. The shoebox sat on my lap like a sleeping animal all the way home. The house had its own warm weather. Coffee smell in the kitchen. Lemon cleaner. The floorboard by the hallway vent gave its small, tired complaint when Evan stepped on it. Lila went to her room and closed the door with a soft click that carried into the rest of the house. Evan stood at the window for a long time and watched nothing. I set the box on the hall table, touched the ribbon where it had split, and left it there. I cooked without tasting. Chicken, rice, apples in a bowl. The kettle started to sing, and I let it finish. Lila came out with her hair tucked under a cap and a gray smear on her palm that would not wash off. She spooned rice and ate half of it and set the spoon down as if the bowl had said something she did not agree with. Evan took a plate and did not sit. He ate standing back to the counter, eyes on the light over the sink. It snowed that night. The sound against the windows was soft enough that you could forget it was there if you wanted to. I did not. I lay awake and listened to the refrigerator click and the wind move around the house. The chimes on our neighbor's porch gave a single careful note and then went still. In the morning, the streets were half cleared. Alan called while the kettle was thinking about boiling. He spoke with the same quiet he used at the table. "The order is in," he said. "We will receive a copy by mail. The referral to the district attorney is standard in a case like this." He did not give me comfort. He did not take any away. "Thank you," I said. He said, "You did the work." We ended the call. Days wore grooves. Evan went to campus, Lila to school and art club. I taught after school reading at the church basement and came home to a kitchen that held the shape of who had been there before me. The shoebox stayed on the table with a new ribbon I had tied badly. The knot sat crooked and stubborn. 3 months slid past like a wet thaw. The district attorney's office sent a letter that said they would not pursue charges because no money had been taken. Alan forwarded an email that said Lauren had lost the apartment and was staying with a friend named Denise. The words did not bring satisfaction. They carried the flat weight of facts. I stood at the sink one afternoon and watched snow melt drip from the eaves into a line of small silver bowls of water along the porch rail. My hands were in the dishwater. The phone sat on the counter. I dried my fingers and picked it up. Lauren answered on the third ring. Her voice had a corner worn off. "Hello?" "It is me," I said. The quiet stretched. I heard a television somewhere in the background say the word weather and then stop. "What do you want?" she asked. She said it as if the question might keep me from entering the room. "To know how you are," I said. The words sounded thin, even to me. "How do you think?" she said. "I lost my place. My lawyer quit when I could not pay him. I cannot see my children for a year." Each sentence had a tail of breath behind it. I held the phone tighter and looked at the window where the water had drawn a trembling line down the glass. I heard myself say, "If you want any path toward knowing them again, it cannot have money in it. It has to be small and simple. Words first. No contact except through me. No requests. No promises." She did not answer. Her silence rustled as if she had changed the phone to the other ear. "And if I write," she said at last, "you will give it to them." "I will hand it to them when they are ready to take it," I said. "Do they hate me?" she asked. "They are hurt," I said. "Hurt and tired." "I am not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I am not asking for anything." "You are asking for paper and a stamp," I said. "That is something." "Send what you want to say. Keep it short. No explanations that accuse anyone. Tell them where you are. Tell them you are working. Tell them you are alive." She let out a breath that clicked at the end. "I will think about it," she said. The call ended with a tone that felt like a door closing without force. I set the phone down and stood with my fingers against the cool of the counter. Lila came into the kitchen to get a glass of water and paused when she saw my face. She did not ask. She drank and left. The glass left a ring on the counter that I did not wipe. A week later, the mailman left a stack of envelopes on the mat and stomped his boots before going back down the steps. Bills. A flyer for a plumbing service. A white envelope with my name written in a hand I knew from the shape of its slant. Inside were 2 smaller envelopes. One said Evan, one said Lila. Each was sealed with a line of clear tape as if the glue had not been enough. The house was quiet. The neighbors had their television up too loud. I stood in the hall as the furnace clicked on and the vent gave its small, tired breath. I set the 2 envelopes on the table beside the blue shoebox and touched the edge of one with my thumb. The paper was ordinary, the names were plain, the flaps were uncut. The chimes outside lifted once and let go. The envelope sat beside the blue shoebox until the kids came home. Evan read his name and handed his back without opening it. "Do what you want with it," he said. He kept his tone polite. The muscles in his jaw worked once and went still. Lila held hers with both hands. She did not open it. She took it to her room and set it on the desk beside her sketchbook. Later, she brought it back. "Can you sit with me while I read?" she asked. We sat on the couch under the window. The house had its afternoon quiet. She slit the top with a butter knife and pulled the letter free. The paper rustled loud in the stillness. She read with her lips pressed together. It was short. It did not say why. It did not explain anything that could be argued. It said, "I am sorry, and I am working, and I have a small place on Cedar, and I think of you every day." It said I kept a picture of you in my wallet. It said I am here if you want to write back. Lila read it twice and folded it along the original crease. She slid it under the front cover of her sketchbook and pressed her palm flat. "I do not know," she said. "You do not have to," I said. The next envelope came 2 weeks later. Then another 2 weeks after that. Evan left his in a drawer without comment. Lila began to answer sometimes. Her notes were careful and plain. She told Lauren about the spring art show. She did not ask questions she was not ready to hear answered. The mailman started to nod when he saw me waiting at the door. When the weather warmed, the court modified the order to allow meetings if everyone agreed, and if I was present. We chose Maple Street Diner because the coffee was honest, and the waitress knew when to stay and when to leave a table alone. Lauren arrived on time. She wore a sweater with a thread pulled at the cuff and a coat bought secondhand. Her hair had more gray than before. She sat with her hands on the table and did not reach. "Hello," she said. "Hello," Lila said. Evan nodded. The first minutes were work. Chairs made their small noises on the tile. The waitress poured coffee and left a little extra in the metal pot. Lila told her mother about the art room and the way the light fell through the high windows. Lauren listened with her body leaning in as if sound could escape otherwise. When she laughed, it came out smaller than before, as if she were not sure she had permission. Evan watched without blinking. He asked simple questions that kept to the edges. "Where are you working? What hours?" Lauren said a medical clinic on the east side front desk and scheduling. She said she was taking the bus in the mornings and that she sometimes walked home if the weather was not bad. She said she was in therapy and did not look away when she did. They met again 2 weeks later. After that, the rhythm held. There were pauses and stumbles, but the pot stayed warm and the waitress learned to bring extra napkins without being asked. Lila started to bring her sketchbook. She turned pages and held them flat and did not apologize for anything she did not like. Lauren touched the corner of a page and smiled at a set of hands done in charcoal. The graphite left a faint shine where it pressed into the paper. Evan sat with his elbows off the table and found small ways to test the edges. He told a story about a lab partner and waited to see if she would pretend to know more than she did. She did not. He told her he was thinking about an internship and left the sentence there. She did not fill it. Spring in Cleveland moved like a tired animal. Some days it slept. Some days it shook itself awake and let the sun through. On a day when the light was kind, the order expired. Lauren asked if the kids would come to her apartment for lunch. She told me the address and said it was fine if I came too. I said I would drop them off and pick them up at 5. Evan knocked and the door opened on a small square of living room with a couch that had been someone else's couch before it was hers. A frame print from a thrift store hung above it, crooked and cheerful. The kitchen smelled like chicken that had not cooperated. There were photos taped to the wall. Some were from school websites printed on a home printer with the colors a little too bright. One was Evan's graduation on newsprint with a red circle around his name. She made chicken and almost burned it. They ate it anyway. She pulled a box from the closet and set it on the table. Inside were sketchbooks with buckled spines. She had used them when she was Lila's age. She flipped to a page and showed a charcoal study of a hand that looked like it had been made yesterday. "You drew too," Lila said, quiet and not a question. "I stopped," Lauren said. She did not say why. Lila touched the paper very carefully. "When Evan turned 21, we had dinner at my house. I made spaghetti and burned the bread. He laughed and told me I never learned how to watch 2 things at once. The cake came out too sweet and perfect anyway." Lauren waited until the plates were pushed back. "I want to say this," she said to Evan. "The money is yours. You do not owe me anything." He looked at her for a moment longer than he had looked before. "Thank you," he said. He meant the words exactly. That summer, the apartment on Cedar started to look less like a place to sleep and more like a place to live. A plant reached for the light in the window. A pan on the stove got seasoned dark and clean. Lila hung one of her smaller sketches above the sink. Evan stopped standing near the door during visits and sat with his back to the room. On a Sunday night when the air held heat late, Lauren and I stood on my porch after dinner. The kids were inside with dishes and a radio station that knew all the songs from the years when I still liked to dance. The wind came off the lake softer than in winter. The chimes gave a lazy sound. "I never said I'm sorry the right way," Lauren said. I looked at her. The porch light made a small circle on the floorboards. Her hands were empty. "You do not have to say any more," I said. She shook her head. "I do. I am sorry I left. I am sorry I came back to take. I am sorry I said things in that room that made them smaller when they were standing as tall as they could. She glanced through the screen where Lila laughed at something on the radio. I am sorry for all the years I was not in the pictures on your shelf. The chimes rang once in a breeze that came and went. I put my hand on the rail and felt the smooth of old paint. I said words I had been circling and did not push them. I forgive you. We do not have to make it more than what it is. We can let it rest where it belongs. She nodded. She wiped under one eye with a knuckle and let out a breath I had not noticed her holding. We went back in. Evan was telling Lila about a classmate who had built a tiny bridge out of toothpicks and glue. Lila was showing him a sketch of a street at night with the puddles warmed by a store's yellow sign. Lauren stood by the counter and watched them without reaching for anything. On the day Lila turned 21, the house wore paper lanterns along the porch and ribbon around the banister. Friends from school came with cheap wine and good laughter. Evan brought someone he was seeing and stood in the kitchen with a hand on the small of her back, like someone who had learned gentleness. The cake leaned a little. Lauren arrived with a box tied in a plain knot. Inside were her old sketchbooks, the ones with the buckled spines and the pages that had learned to carry charcoal. I thought you should have these, she said. She watched Lila's face without blinking. Lila turned pages slowly. The paper whispered. She looked up and smiled. You were good, she said. Lauren laughed without sound and shook her head and then stopped shaking it. Lila reached across the table and touched her hand. After the guests left, the yard settled. The lanterns made small islands of light. The air smelled like late summer and grilled sugar. We stacked plates in the sink and let them soak. Lauren dried 3 glasses and put them back in the wrong cabinet. I left them there. Later, Lila brought a drawing to the porch and set it in my lap. It was a family portrait done in charcoal and graphite, the kind of work where lines know when to stop. I sat at the center in a chair with my feet planted and my hands folded. Evan stood on my right with his head turned like he had just heard his name. Lila stood on my left with her fingers stained a soft gray. Lauren stood at the edge, not outside the frame, not backed away, but placed where the eye finds her after it rests on the middle. Do you like it? Lila asked. I did not answer right away. The paper was warm from her hands. The charcoal had left a fine dust along the edges. The wind moved the chimes just enough to remind us they were there. In the kitchen, the radio found a slow song. Evan laughed at something that did not need words. I looked at the drawing and then at the room it mirrored and nodded once. Keep it where you can see it, I said. She smiled and held the picture against her chest. Lauren came out with 2 cups of tea and set them on the rail. We sat there and did not say anything necessary. The night belonged to itself. The blue shoebox waited on a shelf inside the ribbon tied with a new knot that had learned to hold. The chimes gave a small, even sound, and then another. The house took a slow breath. Not perfect. Ours. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.